is a combat mission shock force level called Hymns Homes. In this mission, the battalion has moved into Hymns, and I am ordered to help capture the city center. Granted, tank platoon, 2 platoons of strikers, and a mechanized platoon. Actually, 2 mechanized platoons. Most of the battalion is here, and my mission is to secure the high-rise flats to the left of this current view. I also have a number of 105mm strikers, which I'm quite happy about, although I don't really get to use them to their full potential in this mission due to all of the line of sight issues. So this is a massive urban sprawl, obviously, and it's going to be a real bloodbath to try to take the city. Tanks and Bradleys, this is not their native environment. So even though I do have a generous amount of armor and armored fighting vehicles, it's not going to really give me an advantage. When I was recording this, I had a really low frame rate too, because you know, when you use fraps, which is what I use to capture these videos, it lowers your frame rate anyway. On most levels it's bearable, but on this level and the level after this, which are so large, the levels themselves, and there's so many units involved, it was almost unplayable. I had less than 10 frames a second this entire mission. So, what I want to do initially is make sure that I have a line of sight with armor down this main road, so I can cut off any maneuver elements that are on the other side, on the left side of town. They have to cross that road to get to the other side of town, so if I position a tank or 2 there, I should be able to cut both sides of the city in half. Other than that, I was going to use the strikers and their mechanized platoons. I was going to have them secure the left side of the city, but the main action, the main thrust of my attack would come in the slums area on the right flank. Just because it's easier to fight there than it would be to fight in those 8 or 10 story, you know, huge buildings on the left flank. It's so difficult to clear those buildings. So I don't really want to, you know, I don't really want to focus on the left flank too much. I want to isolate the enemy on the right flank, and then if the enemy doesn't surrender by the time I secure the right flank, then we can encircle the left flank from the right. I was also informed in the briefing that they have mechanized and armored forces in the slums, so I wanted to make sure that that area was a priority. My initial highest priority is to actually take this building directly in front of what I'm looking at right now, the brown one, just so I could have an observation post over most of the city, and I'll be able to, you know, sight in whatever armor happens to be in the area. So the first thing I do is I capture that building. I probably should have loaded the platoons that take that building up with javelins and other anti-tank weapons. But this is the first time I was playing this, and I really didn't know what to expect. And once I was actually in there, it was difficult to extract them because there was so much combat going on. It was so dangerous just to run across the road that I didn't really want to risk having to extract them and then sending them back in. So I start the mission, and initially it's pretty quiet, but that changes almost immediately. Start taking RPG fire. All these flats. All these high-rise buildings are filled with enemy infantry, and at this point in the war, they're pretty fanatical about defending their cities. Dismount these guys to also establish observation posts. This way, if they are firing upon my vehicles from the buildings, at least the mechanized infantry from the Bradleys will be able to return fire and suppress them. Absolutely love those strikers with the 105mm howitzers. Are so useful. So no initial enemy contact on the left flank. The problem is with these buildings is that the enemy can just hide in the buildings and then ambush me when I pass, which is what they do over and over again. Because it's hard to actually detect them if they're just hiding in the buildings. There's so much room to hide in. And it's not really economical for me to clear every single floor of every single building. It would take like hours to do that. So these guys, in my first observation post, they begin to engage infantry units all around the city, and maneuver forces start to try to get across the road. Luckily, the tank that I positioned there is able to stop that. And from my OP, I can notice that there's a large mechanized armored force on the right side of the city, which I'll be overviewing in a second. So we're already taking casualties. I didn't have a lot of support teams, MP40 teams, just the ones on the right flank, but the Bradley mechanized platoons, they didn't have any support teams at all. So I couldn't really set up any machine gun posts in those buildings on the left flank, unless I transferred teams from the right flank. But since I intended my main action to occur on the right flank, I didn't do that. So I have some forward observers up on the top floor of the OP. It doesn't really come in handy that much, because I've been given some pretty shitty artillery, basically just mortars, and that's because, again, we want to keep the city intact, don't level it, because we have to consider the occupation now. So as you can see there on the right flank, there is about 3 armored fighting vehicles and a tank. So what I'm trying to figure out right now is how to take those out. So, on the second platoon of of Bradleys, I load squads up with javelins and put them into the OP.
Roger.
Hopefully to take out the tank. Because once the tank is down, I can basically charge those armored fighting vehicles with tanks. But I want to take out the tank before I do that because I don't want to risk losing a tank.
Shot over. Shot out.
Calling in some artillery in the center of the slums.
Flash over. Flash out.
Also, as you can see, there's also an armored fighting vehicle in the middle of the slums.
Fire for effect. Out.
That's going to hinder any attack by infantry down the center until I take it out. So I tried taking it out with AT-4s and other handheld AT weapons, and with the artillery. But I only managed to immobilize it. So I'm mounting up the second mechanized platoon for a maneuver attack. So I send, this is a platoon from the 2nd Striker, and it is a fire team for the 2nd Striker platoon. They take some pretty heavy casualties on the roof, but I really wanted to take out that tank. Missed the first missile with the javelin, and then as soon as they fire the javelin, those armored vehicles open fire on the roof and deal substantial casualties. And the tank zeroes in on us and fires a heat round which kills a third of the squad. Still determined to take it out though. I don't want those armored fighting vehicles to go into the inner slums once I actually begin my central push. So that tank's down. I now rally up my armor and prepare a spearhead attack on the right flank. Send this battered mechanized fire team back into the building. So while that fighting was going on, somehow one of the Bradleys in the 1st mechanized platoon got taken out, probably from an ATGM. Luckily the crew and the fire team inside bailed out to a nearby building, so they were pretty safe. Have them punt around the corner, so they'll stop as soon as they see those vehicles. Those vehicles do have missile launchers, and they can knock out tanks, although it's unlikely, especially the Abrams, which is basically a badass vehicle. Come right around the corner and engage these vehicles. too worried about being attacked by AT weapons from these buildings, because I know that the bulk of the enemy infantry is in the center, not on the flanks. So, to my knowledge, most of the enemy maneuver forces have been destroyed now, and I can attack in the center. I still move up my tanks a little bit. Yep, just like you spotted. I want to take out that armored fighting vehicle in the middle of the town. The one that the guys from the OP managed to immobilize. Unfortunately, I just cannot target it. It's just out of range. You see all the shells, the craters I mean, from the artillery shells. Fortunately, mortars are not really suited to go through armored plating. But we crawl up a little bit more on the far right flank so I can get some recon, see what else is over here. So I have no idea what other maneuver forces are in the city. Enemy infantry on the fringes of town. And they retreat towards the center. So, I decided to launch a probing attack on the left flank. Not really sure what to expect. I know that most of the scattered enemy elements on this flank have been suppressed by this base of fire here. But I didn't know really what was, forward towards this flank. I was also doing this, I wanted to hopefully help the center, but the attack got repulsed. So one of my Bradleys gets taken out by an ATGM. I noticed that there's enemy infantry platoons in between where I am and where my base of fire is, they're basically just ambushing me now. So I try to pop smoke on these vehicles as quickly as possible, dismount, and run into the buildings. There's a whole bunch of infantry platoons in between my overwatch position and where my Bradleys are, and they're basically lying in wait right now. They quite effectively ambushed my mechanized platoon. Luckily I managed to get most of the personnel to this building, and now they're strong pointing that. Still need to take out this BTR before I'm able to actually push down the center. So one of the Bradleys in the attack was destroyed, the other one was immobilized. At least I know what's in that area now. I can't really send up the strikers with the 105mm howitzers to support, because I know that the area is so dangerous and is teeming with so many infiltrators that they're almost bound to get taken out by AT weapons. And those strikers are even more vulnerable to AT fire than are the Bradleys. So this is basically pretty risky what I do here. I just charge this tank down the center to take out the BTR. Just hoping that no other tanks there. And I begin to push up to the center. Rather than withdraw that tank, I decide to come up with another probing attack towards the center. It's temporarily withdrawn to link up with the Bradleys, but once it does, I commence a new attack towards the center to further cut the city in half and to isolate pockets of enemy resistance. So I can't really do much on the left flank. I don't have enough dismounts to really do anything. Here's another ambush on one of my platoons. They wait for my guys to get right up to the building and they all open fire. I probably should have just kept that fire team back, but I was really trying to get there to make sure that the center attack was not outflanked itself. Luckily, these infiltrators that are ambushing me, they decide to just hide there for the entire combat and do not flank my center force. I believe that they are cut off from command and thus did not have the ability or the inclination to actually respond. That's one of the huge advantages of playing as the US, is that the entire US force is basically connected via GPS and, you know, Blue Force Tracker. And that's modeled in the game. You know, it's very difficult for the US units to be cut off from each other from communicating. And as a result of that, they're able to move quicker. When you get cut off from command, your troops have a tendency to rout, panic, or stay where they are and refuse orders. So those Syrians in these buildings may just be cut off from command. I did pretty effectively cut the city in half, although not as effectively as I would like. So now my armored spearhead attack is the heart of the city. If I were in command of this battalion, I think I would have attacked this city in a much different fashion. It's pretty ineffective to bring armored vehicles into an urban setting. It would have been much more effective to just encircle the city and either starve it out or I would have relocated more infantry assets to attack in the city, and I would have used the maneuver forces to encircle and destroy reinforcements outlying the city, and to fully encircle the city from the outside. So the way it is now, you know, these armored vehicles are very ineffective in these confined spaces. They're most effective when there's a lot of maneuver room, and when you have a clear line of sight on whatever you're fighting. In this sort of setting, a 12-year-old kid with a RPG can take out your $20 million tank. So this attack in the center with the armored forces was actually a pretty good move. Since the enemy is attempting to reinforce the center from the left, and I'm opening fire on them with the Bradleys and the tank. And now I'm aggressively moving up in the center. I don't know which one of these houses has enemy forces, but I have much more infantry here than I do on the left flank, so I'm not really worried about ambushes that much, because I can, you know, respond effectively. I thought that was another BTR for a second, and then I realized that was just a UAZ. UAZ is basically a Jeep. So there's a great deal of Syrian infantry in the center, but I really slaughter them. They're cut off from the left, and I destroyed all their mechanized forces, and their command is disrupted. They're slaughtered pretty badly. Every time I engage them, they just retreat, and they continually get overran. I set up temporary bases of fire on the second floor of buildings, and then I move forward with forces that are in the rear, effectively creating a bounding overwatch. So as I'm making contact with these Syrian elements, they're just retreating, as I said. Which is fine with me, because every time they turn their backs and run, you know, I manage to take out a couple of them. So I try to increase the tempo here to overrun them. What I probably should have done, I probably should have taken a few Bradleys and cut down one of the city streets, but I really didn't want to lose any other armored vehicles since I already lost a Bradley. My probing attack on the left. Building here on the right that I'm firing at now, this is sort of like an enemy headquarters. There's an entire company of infantry there, but I fire upon them from multiple angles and successfully overcome their defenses. Pretty much a slaughter. Syrian elements that are defending against my attack are pretty disorganized. I take very few casualties during this attack. I'm much more successful here than I was on the left flank, and I think if I would have put most of my efforts towards the left flank, I probably would have lost this battle. So my armored forces are exchanging fire with irregular forces on the left flank, which is fine. It's keeping them pinned so they can't maneuver over and attack the center. So enjoy the rest of the video. I don't think any more commentary will be necessary. From this point on, I just slowly reduce the enemy force until they surrender. I just paralyze, encircle, and divide, and effectively defeat them. So enjoy.